All right. Hopefully breaking into just 2 or 3 or 4 Zoom guys help facilitate discussion. I feel like if the 3 of us sit here and ask questions, we get a lot of blank stares, especially after lunch. That burger's sitting heavy on you. So our goal is to kind of bring it down to a more personal level. We'll start the kind of large group discussion now, and just for disclaimer, this is being recorded, and I think we'll post this to YouTube. So just so you're aware of any stories you tell may end up on the internet. So think about that problem. So we asked for you all to kind of talk about the video, and then I know each of the facilitators had a couple of points. So would anybody care to share in the room or on Zoom with a big takeaway that you either relearned or learned for the first time, or something you didn't think about, that now you're like, wow, that really resonated home with me? Is there anything anyone cares to share? So if you want to take Zoom, and they could go to speaker view, so in case anybody on Zoom land wants to add their 2 cents. Captain Denny in the back.
I'd say the biggest thing for me in just reviewing the videos and whatnot was in taking ownership, like when things happen, maybe it was super valid excuse, but making a plan to overcome it. Senator Hubble had come up with an example of
scheduling.
Yeah, exactly, scheduling. So like, okay, well, I can't do this mission, but here, let me offer you a different solution. So just having a plan if you do have a valid excuse or something, because at the end of the day, if you have all these excuses, you still have to progress and do something for yourself, right? To be able to progress.
So instead of bringing more issues to the process, be a solution person. There's an issue, however, I have a solution, and this is how we're going to mitigate further the issue.
I think it's really a great idea, great point, that you don't want to be the person that's known as the excuses person, right? Like, I just can't do it. Like, the person that is, if they have an excuse, they've got a solution to offer you up. And we talk about excuses. I think Colonel Kramer talked about the video, hit the COVID button, but it's not always a COVID button. There are excuses that are valid. There's excuses that are invalid, and there's a middle ground. And in some of our talking beforehand, talk about moderating this. There's things that, if you ask early, aren't excuses, but if you ask later, it could be excuse, right? Like, I didn't understand what you wanted from me, so I just didn't do it. Is a really bad excuse when it's the due date your homework's due. But if it's the day the assignment's issued and the next day you're like, I don't really understand, can you give me some clarity? Well, that's not an excuse anymore, right? Like, you've got time to solve the problem and whatnot. So it's not always offering an excuse when it's early on in the process that allows you to come to that solution.
That's basically what I'm sorry, man. I'm blanking on your name, Airman
Castillo.
Airman Castillo. He was mentioning PT test. A lot of people are using the COVID excuse. Actually, can you give us the example? Sorry to call you out like that, but yeah.
Basically, that you don't need a building to run or to do push-ups and sit-ups. So it's just easy to say COVID this, COVID that when you fail. But it's like, I don't know, you have to take ownership and make sure that you go run if it's cold, if it's raining, it doesn't really matter. Just having ownership and making sure that you have to do what you have to do. Because at the end, it's like your career and stuff.
Basically, where there's a will, there's a way. So if you want to get in shape for your PT test, you can just go outside, or there's plenty of ways to get in shape.
Run around the house, do push-ups, sit-ups, around the neighborhood. Yeah.
For the point, somebody else have any other big takeaways?
We got into, Sergeant Valdez gave an example of self-assessment, something where he didn't go out asking for help. Do you mind if I sort of talk on this? He went through an injury that had him grounded for some time. And he has goals. Some of his goals: become an instructor, become an evaluator. But during that time, he didn't identify or he didn't take advantage of that time, right? I'm not missing. Just to be in the books, lead training, things of that nature. But if he actually conducted a self-assessment, asked for feedback, his peers, his leadership, they could have sat down and told him, hey, this is what you should be doing, capitalize on this time rather than using that COVID excuse for not to come in or whatever it may be. That's not the case. Yeah, self-assessment. You gotta look inward. See, a lot of these excuses can be fixed if you just look inward. You prevent it.
And with those excuses too, I know Captain Delian gave us a pretty good story for when he was an instructor down in schoolhouse, which I've never heard a pilot story before in my life, but basically when things are going wrong, hey, listen, if you gotta take ownership of it, take ownership. Don't oh, it was your fault. It was your fault. And somebody else, I'm blanking out, but somebody else gave an example as well as when we're going through training. I'll see you right. When we're going through training, and we've all heard it, they ask you about a system. Oh, I never seen that before. And then, no, hey, look, listen, just take ownership of it. Oh, you know what, man, I forgot. Oh, I didn't study it. Oh, let me get back to you on that one. You know, just your go-to. I've never seen that before. That is an excuse. That's probably a lie because I guarantee you at least one instructor has gone over it with you. You know.
So the idea of ownership, right? So recognizing when maybe we've failed to meet a standard or failed to meet our own expectations. Super easy for us all to do. That's probably a good thing, right? I think I haven't heard anybody in any of the 3 discussions or Zoom chime in and be like, I don't believe in this idea of ownership. I think that I just shouldn't have to worry about these problems. So I think everyone's on the same page. How much harder is it to do it though than it is to say it? So what are the things that we've got to put aside in our egos when you do that, right? So if you're going to own a failure, whether it's yours or I think the group I was talking with, like, talked about, hey, you're a supervisor, like you have to own your people's failures below you, right? So if you tell them to do something, they don't do it, and then your boss comes asking for it, well, guess what? Like that's probably partially your fault. So a lot harder to do it. It's much easier to point the finger, oh, it wasn't me, it was them. And so going back to what Sergeant was talking about, like some self-reflection afterwards, if you ever catch yourself in that moment, or hopefully someone provides you that feedback, hey, like, I know you're saying it's not your fault, but like, could you have helped mitigate this problem? Yeah, I probably could have done something. Okay, so like now that's the opening of the door to the ownership piece. Like, hey, you know, could you have, if you could have done something to prevent this, like that's growth opportunity for you next time. Carl Johnson stood up here and talked about, don't come to me, you use word opportunities versus limitations. Like as a negative connotation, opportunities are chances to succeed. That really resonated with me. So if you have, even in a failure, identified as an opportunity to succeed later, you're going to be a better person. The team's going to be stronger for it. And more than likely, I'm just hypothesizing, your subordinates are going to respect you a little bit more when you own that failure, right? So if someone, I know it hurts your ego and it takes a little bit, a little sting initially, but I think people will respect you more. At least I certainly would respect you more if you own it, embrace it, and then correct it for the future.
Yeah, like your subordinates will respect a lot. Much more respect if you do that. And additionally, to add to your point, Sergeant I mentioned, hey, you gotta talk and walk the walk. Basically, to say, I wouldn't ask anybody to do something that I've never done before. So, basically recognizing that your own limitations and your, as a supervisor, your trip limitations, even if they don't know that they have those limitations as well, in order to put up to the task.
Sir, as a supervisor, I think there's that fine line, sir, where, yeah, like my supervisor told me to do something and then I pass it on to the next person. If they don't do it, at some point they have to be responsible because you can't always be on top of everybody all the time. So it's kind of like, yeah, it was your fault. I passed it on to you and you didn't do it. So, because then that becomes an excuse for them because someone else is taking ownership. And that's a fine line too, where they have to be responsible because, especially in the Air Force, we're moving on and they're the ones that are going to fix us. And if they're constantly looking at their supervisor who's got the answers for them, then that becomes an issue later later down the road.
Yeah, what do you all think about that? Probably been in a situation, maybe you had to deal with that before. You don't want to hear me talk all day. I don't want to hear myself talk. Do you want to have any thoughts on that? I think Attorney De La Rosa brings up a great point. It's kind of a trickle down effect, but like if the buck stops here, the people below you are going to grow and they just get by. Then we have big excuses because their boss made it for them. Hey, I'll own that one. Oh, thank God, I don't have to worry about it. Not my fault. Even though it might have been 100% their fault. Anybody been in that situation?
Greatest example I can think of is evaluation of EPRs. When it comes time for EPRs, you have all you do is staff sergeants, for example. Some of them are great, some of them aren't, and a lot of times what happens is they write something that is not up to a NCO's responsibility for their PDs. They've been to PDs, they've been there, they sat there. They didn't ask, during the process, during the month that they had to write it prior, or the year to write it prior, and all of a sudden they turn in a product that is unacceptable. And so not only is it, it's on the due date or even late sometimes, is it late, but it's just not to a standard to which, like, you have no choice but from that moment, because it's so late or just bad, just to sit down with them and try to teach them, mentor them. You don't have enough time, especially when you have 15 or 20 or more to do, not only just as one individual. So you try to kick it back and try to mentor them as best as you can, or fix it and say, hey, by the way, this isn't acceptable. And then what happens is the next year it comes around and the same thing. Say, we had this conversation. I showed you how to do this. You've seen your previous CPRs. You've been in long enough time to understand and to know what the standard is and what an EPR is supposed to look like. And so, that we try to grow and mentor the people, but I think that's one of those things that people kind of skate by. They take so much time to wait. They're not taking real ownership of their product and what they want to put out there. They just want to get it done and out there. As soon as they pass it on, it's kind of like, oh, I'm done with it. I don't have to worry about it anymore.
So an opportunity for some feedback for sure, right, to the people below you. I'll be the first one to tell you that I hate the timelines we established, right? Like, if it's due on the 1st of the month, it's due to me on the 15th, it's due to your supervisor before you, the 1st of the previous month, and like it trickles down to where your EPR is due 6 months before the closeout. And somewhere in the middle, we've got to find the timeline that works for us. But to your points are really like, yeah, if you're owning it as a point at the top, like, hey, this is going to be crap, and you push it forward, but you don't fix the people below you, then when, like Sergeant De La Rosa mentioned, when you're gone and they're replacing you, like, they're going to be set up for failure, not success. So definitely is a delicate line to walk, to teach people below you but still own all of the stuff above. Captain Calco was talking, and I just wrote down a note from something that has just always stuck with me, that you guys probably heard this before. You can delegate authority, but you can't delegate responsibility. So you ask someone to do something, at the end of the day, like, you have to own the outcome of that process. Now, does that mean that they don't get feedback below you if they fail? No, but that means when it goes up, right, your boss doesn't come to you and you just put the shield up. Hey, this is Sergeant Hubble's problem. I had nothing to do with it. Well, it was assigned to you, Mater. Like, don't blame your master sergeant. Teach or mentor or fix the problem. So I just, there's a little quote that's just always stuck with me when you talk about leadership. Do you have a question? Do I go to the 3 questions that we kind of have? I think we can talk a little bit about them in the groups. We can tie it all together. Then we got about 7 more minutes. I think we need to get out of here so that Chief Fierro can come in and give his talk to the listed folks.
I have a question, but not. I asked this question to Micro specifically, but I want to hear somebody else's take as well. So the COVID excuse, right, which is what Colonel Kramer was talking about. Have you, as a whole group, have you heard it used as a blanket statement for everything? Is it a hot topic? Is it a buzzword? Is it affecting your operations, or is this just something that you guys just have to deal with? Which we have to, right? Anybody?
I think the biggest thing it's been used for is PT.
Mm.
I mean, even with the Air Force, you know, they've been pushing it off, and so you see like members kind of pushing it off as well. And it, like we've been saying, like taking ownership of your PT is like a big thing to do. So I think as soon as September comes around, people might not see that they've been taking ownership as much as they should.
And let me reiterate, yeah, COVID is, you know, we take it seriously when we're wearing masks here and we properly distance ourselves in our office and so on. But however, it becomes a point, just like you mentioned, where, all right, I can't do PT because of COVID. No, dude, there's a tough plan out there. I know it's out there, you know, some bars out there, some push-ups. So, okay, so you've seen it used mostly, and is that resounding with everybody else, and mostly for PT, that it's COVID.
That and how transient air crews treated on the road for food and stuff. Hey, COVID, man, we can't take anywhere. So like, no one's like adjusting for everyone. Like, they're not asking themselves, can we adjust this? They're just using COVID as an excuse to like not even look into the problem.
Well, I'm not going to disagree with that one. I'm the outside man, that specific situation, but there is a difference between an excuse and a mitigating measure, right?
I understand the mitigation purposes for us coming through, but when like air crews like, hey, like we need food, we need these things to survive, and then no one's come up with a plan, and they've just said, well, because of COVID, we can't let you do these things. Then like that, they're just like, it's been a year. So at this point, people are just making excuses.
So,
Because at that point, you lose the mitigation, right?
So,
There's
like,
no mitigation for it, so it just becomes an excuse,
Yeah.
right? Because the process to come up with a plan or solution stop.
Yeah.
Boom, that's, okay.
And like they kind of tie our hands because like a lot of places are just saying like now you stay in your hotel room. So like very limited on like delivery and things like that. Make sure switching up.
So now you're limited to an igloo food.
Yeah.
Some food.
Whatever you brought.
Yeah, pretty much.
And that's the same example that Kevin Denny was talking about on our group. And she took it farther and to talk about, okay, right, we're not getting food out in the road, so what can we do in order to make this crappy situation into a better situation and not come up with an excuse to make it crappier and to bring everybody down, but hey, you know what, we're in this together. She mentioned maybe make a crew EQ or crew meals or whatever and bring it up to the jet, but make an experience out of it, even though it still sucks. We still gotta do things, missions gotta get done.
Yeah.
So, and I personally, I do not like, and I'm sure the rest of you guys do not like to have somebody right next to you working with you. Man, this sucks. Like, or, hey man, have you done this? No, man, I'm hungry, or not that I'm hungry, right? No, whatever excuse, right? Excuses that are not warranted or just come out of to eat there. You know what I mean? Oh, I'm hungry, I haven't eaten 24 hours. I'm just kidding.
It sounds like that's extreme. I was in your group, but like extreme ownership from the aircraft commander, right? Like, hey, we know we have a limitation. I'm going to own this. Here's the deal. We're all going to chip in $5. You're going to get per diem anyway. So we're going to go before we leave home station or last place I know to get food. We're going to pack that Yeti that Squadron bought for us, full of, you know, whatever that may be. We're going to cook in the plane. We're going to cook in our hotel rooms. We're going to do a crew BBQ. You know, I know through my planning and being disciplined that like I'm not going to have meals available in Germany. Now I don't know how long Fred's going to keep me there. It could be days, weeks. He could PCS for him time. Who knows? But you know, we have a plan for at least the scheduled portion of our trip to help overcome some of those things. So it seems like an opportunity. Now, to your point, man, like I know it sucks. Like no one wants to be told you can't go to job net when you watch people walking in and out. Like, why not me? But that's the way of looking at it. You're like, hey, these are the limitations, right? Like I can't necessarily affect them, or I can't affect them in a timely manner. I can push forward leadership and try to get them changed. But I know when I get there, I'm not going to be able to use the commissary. So now I've got to take some ownership over that problem and figure out a solution for my crew. And Kevin doing that. I know she's a great instructor and a great pilot. So more on.
And that's the opportunity for us to figure out, again, how can we be assets instead of liabilities and mitigate excuses
Just
and
24 hours long.
mitigate unsafe conditions, right? Just be assets, proactively looking to be an asset.
Your mission is 4
I don't
hours.
think I wrote down.
If you're about to go off
Take
station.
away from this lesson, be an asset, not a liability. So if you got a problem, figure out a way to solve it versus being the person who's gonna be toxic about it.
Ownership solves problems. That's the biggest thing, is the moment you start to take ownership, your team takes ownership, problems get solved. If you start pointing that finger, those problems will never get resolved. There'll be an ongoing issue,
During the
ongoing
first
battle
hour,
for now until
to
somebody
do light
actually
coaching.
does. So, ownership is key.
Yeah.
Jocko said, so put your ego and pride to the side, take ownership, solve the problem, don't be the problem.
I just have one question specifically for Sergeant Vance. Sergeant Vance, you're a scheduler. You gotta deal with people. I don't see another scheduler here, so I'm just picking on you for shits and gigs. You deal with people every day, and to try to schedule for missions, and I'm sure you hear all sorts of excuses all the time. What kind of progress do you have to mitigate that, or come up with a solution, or help them out, or just say, hey man, sorry, you gotta fly? What's your process when it comes to somebody giving you what you might perceive as excuses that are not valid? So it will make us it will make your life or your job a lot easier if we come up with a plan. Hey man, I'm not gonna, once again, I'm not gonna be, we identify our limitations, take ownership over limitations, and tell you, hey man, I can do it this week, this, and this. However, next week, that will probably work a lot better for you, right? Save you a lot of headaches.
Absolutely, and then just call people and ask them, like, hey, well, what's your availability? And that's one of the nice things about Mr. Marquez is every week he's on the schedule. It's like, hey, you want to be on the schedule, like, you want to fly this mission? So those people usually reach out and like, hey, I can probably do this mission like 3 weeks from now, like I'm good enough to leave, my rock is up. And so they're like, okay, perfect. Now I know that you're going to be on this mission 3 weeks from now, so you can kind of mitigate your home life.
Basically, there's no excuse to not be an asset.
Yeah.
Wow, got it. All right, well, before we break this up, is there any other parting thoughts from the greater audience in here? This development, professional development, happens because you all participate. So I do want to thank you all for participating today and having conversations, tough conversations with each other. Does anybody else have a last minute reattack or anything you want to add before we break? No? Awesome. Well, thanks for coming. Thanks for participating. And then for all the enlisted folks in the room, Chief Guerrero is going to be here to talk about the promotion.
Yeah, that's for all ranks.
Okay.
If you're a flight commander and you're rating on people and everything else,